Yes. I love the energy. I love the energy. That's what I'm looking for tonight. We are so excited to see you all tonight on this lovely, lovely, it's Wednesday, yeah? This lovely Wednesday. And the weather's acting a little funny today. It's a little warmer than I think it should be for this October day, but climate change, am I right? All right, y'all. In case you didn't know, you are here for a book event for a lovely book called Today I Saw a Revolution. From grassroots to global change, the David Majumdar story. So I'm actually going to go ahead and quickly introduce your host, and then I'm going to let him take it away from there. Tonight we are very, very honored to have John Kudrod, the only, the fabulous, the one, to be our moderator tonight. Give him a round of applause, please.
And really, thank you all for coming tonight. This is something I've been looking forward to. I've come to a lot of events here, and I've always wanted to have one. So now we have one here. And anyway, I was the first volunteer in the Hunger Project, which is an organization that these two people have been our critical leaders in. And the Hunger Project works in about 22,000 communities throughout Africa, South Asia, Latin America, to really strengthen the power of grassroots people to, in the words of Mahatma Gandhi, really take charge of their own lives and destiny, set their own targets, achieve them through principles of gender equity and self-reliance and local participatory democracy. So this is not a traditional handout kind of charity. You'll hear a lot about it tonight. So I just wanted to mention that part first. So who we have here is the world famous author Kathy Burke from Australia. So Kathy was the country director for the Hunger Project Australia for many years, very strategic and catalytic leader who unleashed an enormous amount of resources for villages around the world. And she'll also tell you a little bit more about how she's learned from people in really low-income situations and have those people be teachers to the corporate world. Then Professor Badil Al-Majumdar has led an extraordinary life, which is why you will want to read Kathy's brilliantly written book. I read this book a couple of times as it was coming to fruition, and anybody who loves Badil, and a lot of us have known and love Badil, will love this book. It's such a rich and beautifully written life story of an amazing life. And for those of you who don't know Badil, you will after you read the book. So please read the book. That's the point of tonight. But with that, I'm going to introduce, now Kathy, you asked me to, instead of asking you the first question, you asked Badil the first question. So Badil, what's it like to have somebody write your life story? How was that process for you? What went on in your heart and mind as she was digging out of you all the details of your life?
I didn't know that I had so many details to share. In fact, I read the book while I was flying to New York. I was in New York. And I finished it at the wee hours of the morning. And after reading it, well, I was inspired. And I wrote to Kathy that, who is this guy? And I want to meet this guy. And well, I hope you will get inspired. And I think I came from a very humble background. And very challenging environment I grew up, and grew up in abject poverty. And here I am. And the lesson I have learned from reading the book is that if I can make it, anybody can. And so I feel that it narrates a journey, a long journey, and of 31 years, or 30 years. And it has not been a very smooth journey. A lot of challenges.
People putting contracts on your life.
Yeah, yeah. And here we have Marsha Barnica, Ambassador Marsha Barnica, and her motorcade was set up while she was leaving our home after a farewell dinner. And then our home was attacked. I still the book by the So all these things and many other challenges. And in fact, I wonder whether we would be alive if Hasina would be around after August 5. And so, yeah, it's a story of a life which has many phases and many aspects. And I was born and brought up in the background of the World War II and the Bengal famine. And I have seen, I don't remember, but that was the time when I was born. And I've seen through all the.
Don't tell your whole life story.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Kathy, why did you write this book?
Well, just for that moment was priceless. So I've had the absolute joy to know the deal since 1997. Is it echoing for you? Is it all right? Okay, cool. And have spent a lot of time in Bangladesh over the decades, just seeing the work grow. I first went there in 1998. And I left the Hunger Project after 20 years on staff, and 2 years later in 2019, I caught up with Badil and his wife Tazima in Melbourne. And he was telling me like all the incredible things he's doing and the struggle towards democracy and everything. And I was like, you've really got to write this down. I was looking at him, he was like in his mid-70s, and you know, the proverbial bus comes for all of us in the end. And I just couldn't bear that there's no cohesive narrative around what was created from not just his own personal life story, but a country that struggled with so much. And from that, he created the largest grassroots movement in the country for women, for youth, for democracy. And that's all would be left would be a few manuals in a drawer somewhere, and like old timers, you know, chewing on their smokes, thinking about what it was like back in the day. And I felt, so I wanted to honour his story and that progression just for my own, I guess, honouring of all that he and his work has given me. It's really helped forge me into the leader that I became. But also, this isn't just the story of an extraordinary man. We live at such a pivotal time in human history. Like, in many days, it feels like the forces of darkness are coalescing, you know, like the orcs are about to come over the hill. And it's easy to forget that we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and we often look back to people who have died or, you know, into the past, and we have this living sort of resistance fighter, if you like, and this creator of a new future. And Badil's life and his work leaves breadcrumbs for us all. So even whether or not we're interested in Bangladesh or we even know where it is, if you're like me and you're wanting more hope for the future and like some way of how do we figure this out, both from a head and a heart, Badil's life and this book helps show kind of one pathway. And it reminds me every day that like I'm enough as I am to like just take like a step, right? And we all are. And you can see from his story, he constantly just was figuring it out. Like there was no manual roadmap. He made loads of mistakes. I've got them in the book. I'm going to share one of them later. But it sort of gives me permission and us readers permission to just be human and messy and complicated, but also courageous and fierce and loving and bold, and that the power of individual and collective action is a force for good. So they're like my 2 reasons for writing a book.
Great, Kathy, thank you. And, what was the biggest challenge in writing this book? It took a while.
Everything makes me laugh about this book. Well, one of the biggest challenges in finishing was an actual bloody revolution in Bangladesh. So I had the book almost finished, and then the whole rewrite needed to happen. So, and then the internet was out for, the Sina closed the internet for 12 days and couldn't be in contact with him, and his kids were texting me, he's okay, we think, and it was just some of that logistics. And part of it too was like, I like a Nova deal, but my kids, because my kids are living with me at the moment, and my beautiful husband is down there, and they constantly hear just one side of WhatsApp calls, Nova deal, no, like this bit, like just yelling at him to try and get like, how did you feel like when you first thought of shifting mindsets, like how did you get from here to this revolution, like what was the next step? And he'd go into the kind of outcome, but I wanted to understand the process. And when you led the first vision commitment and action workshop, how did you feel? And of course he was nervous and he was worried about what his friends would think, and he was concerned it may not work, and he really wanted it to work. And so pulling out that kind of the humanness to it rather than just the heroic outcomes, we sort of had to really like drag that out with each other.
Yeah. So when Kathy says, enormous outcomes, the Hunger Project in Bangladesh, as Kathy said, was the largest volunteer movement for development in the country, and has trained hundreds of thousands of volunteers, huge volunteer force. What then was the biggest surprise for you, Kathy, in writing your book?
Like definitely how long it took to write. So I went to Bangladesh when I had the big idea, you write the book deal, I heard my voice saying that, I thought, I need to write the book. I went to Bangladesh again in December 2019, and it's only just come out in October 2024, so it's like 5 years. So just, and I just think, and I felt bad about it often, that I hadn't finished the book, he's getting older. I'm not being ghoulish about it, but it's just, there was that sort of pressure, and I couldn't quite get the right story, because I just didn't want it to just be about the Hunger Project or anything. And then I got a really good editor who helped me with that process, but also just having compassion for myself that these things take time. And also, like, I've got my own work that I do. I run leadership programs and coaching in different organisations and stuff. And so I had to like really carve out the time to do it, and I made that decision this year that I would carve out the time to finish it and do so gracefully. And so I sort of gave myself to the book, and then it just flowed. So just making that time was a surprise. The deal's life less so. I mean, there's lots of snakes in his story, which you'll find out. But then I'm Australian, so like the Bangladeshis have their snakes, and the Americans got your snakes, but like hold my deal. We have snakes. So so it was more of the time and the process that was the surprise to me.
Great. And what do you want people to take away from the book? what difference in their lives do you see the book could make?
Pretty much what I said, like I just want people in the world to read, I want people to fall in love with it, to think about leadership and the future in a different way, to have a sense of hope, because one of the biggest obstacles we have is the idea that we can't change anything, we're too small, the powers that be are too much. And I fall prey to that as well, particularly with what's happening in the world right now. And so falling prey to being cynical or resigned, it's sort of comfortable and it gets us off the hook a little bit. And I really want people to come alive again to human potential and to power and the what's possible through collective action that's based in possibility and really good principles. Like Baddiel's a really good human, you know, like he's like genuinely like a really good person and really lived and breathed his principles. And I feel like if we just work out what's important to us and find others who feel the same way, and then we want to take action together and to then have some inspiration on how that can happen, and help awaken us up into love and leadership, and that it's a love letter to Baddiel in many ways, but it's also a love letter to human beings. You know, when I think about the women in villages that I've spent so much time with them, what they overcame, their own conditioning, initially I can't do it, I'm not educated, their social conditioning, which was so suppressive, and they were still able to overcome that and then bring their village with them. Like, it's just monumental, and I definitely feel that provides a roadblock, and that was unleashed really through love and really getting who people really are, and Baddiel lives that, and so I hope I represented that in the book.
Great, thank you. Now, Prof, so one of the next steps of this book is to make a Bangladesh edition, right? And what are you hoping the people of Bangladesh will get from reading this book?
Thank you. It has been a journey, a long journey. And so in this journey, a person who was trained as a new classical economist and knew and talked about trickle-down approach to poverty alleviation and special projects for creating, for giving handouts, providing support to people to end their own hunger and poverty, and in the process created beneficiaries and really not making a sustainable change in their lives. And so we took a different approach and watching what was happening. And in fact, as I was saying, that I was a new classical economist, and I worked with a lot of villagers and just common people, everybody dismisses every day, and men and women and young people. And they've been my teachers. I had some world-renowned professors when I was going to school there. I was a student of Peter Drucker, and then I found new teachers in Bangladesh, and those are the uneducated villagers. And they shaped me, they transformed me, they made me the person that I am. So this book really narrates that story, and story of a love affair basically. In fact, we wrote the love letter, and I had a love affair with the people of Bangladesh and people from all walks of life, especially the poor and the people who have been struggling to make their ends meet. And it's and she beautifully captured that. I mean, I'm really grateful to her. And so, in fact, I was, as I said, that I was born in abject poverty and a difficult child. Not difficult in the sense that some of the politicians, but difficult in the sense of poverty and other deprivations. And so I've been able to overcome those, and thanks to my mother. And my mother, I was the only child of my mother and my parents. And my mother didn't ever step into the corridor of the school, but she was the strongest person. She was the real leader. She was the best manager I've seen. And so she shaped me. She also influenced me. So here I am, and she has kept her beautiful.
Great, thank you. So tell us about, tell us about the title of this book, because the title existed before the most recent revolution in Bangladesh, but it expresses something broader and deeper. So tell us about the title.
Well, a UN official belonging to the UN Democracy Fund, they gave us a grant to mobilize villages and for achieving SDGs. So they went to see our work and evaluate our work. And the gentleman, he was an Austrian gentleman working for the UN Democracy Fund. When he and his, he had another companion who went with him. And when they came back to our office in Dhaka after visiting the village, and he told us that he saw a revolution of all the women and all the young people who were mobilized and were taking action and on a voluntary basis and taking responsibility for their own future rather than waiting for handouts and waiting for help from outside. And so that's where the title came from. In fact, there is a lady, young lady here, Rumana from USA in Dhaka, and she's spending some time. She had the opportunity to go and see our work, and for an hour or two, and she and her colleagues, and so she saw some of the women, and Rumana, you remember all the women who were doing so many things, and women farmers, women who were raising cattle, chicken, and farming, and all kinds of things, and also people taking initiative to build peace and harmony in the community, and mobilizing other people. And so this is what we have done over the years. This is what is included in the book.
So I want us to look at two particular chunks of the book. I know as a male human being, you're a male human being, we signed on to this commitment not knowing we would have to become full-bore feminists to smash the kind of patriarchy that was causing these issues. So, Kathy, I would love for you to read the passage from your book on that kind of transformative process that our organizations need to go through in our commitment to economic poverty. And then I want to talk a little more about youth after that. And then we'll have questions and answers from everybody.
How you going down there? Yeah, okay.
As John was saying, the whole project leadership made a big commitment that everything had to be about centering the power of women. This is in the kind of mid to late 90s, right? So in the aftermath of the organisation's shifting direction, global staff leaders report to the New York headquarters in what became a multi-year conversation on how to orient the work of the Humble Project toward empowering women. Joan Holmes, who was the founding president, knew that what was required was nothing short of a transformation. It wasn't just about changing some of the programs and tinkering around the edges so that women were included. It required a complete confrontation with the structures of privilege and power men were afforded, as well as the individual work women and men must do that accompanied this. Change wasn't only going to happen out there in the programs on the ground, it needed to happen in here as well, in the hearts and minds of the leaders of the organisation. It was difficult for everyone, especially the men, to explore how perhaps their position and success in the world were determined less by their own efforts as previously thought, and more from being born male in a world designed for and by men. For many, this was a painful realisation, but a necessary one, and this was true for Baddiel too. He was a typical man of his generation, and blithely unaware of his own limiting beliefs around women. Even though he considered himself a good man and considerate of women, he had been raised to have his way of doing things be the way things were done, and he hadn't questioned this before. In both his marriages, he had made the financial decisions, and while he liked to think he included his wives in them, on reflection he could see he truly did not. Whatever opportunities he had wanted to pursue, be they educational or vocational, Baddiel had seized, not fully accounting for the cost to his family, the turmoil and instability that his choices caused them. To make the leap fully into empowering women in their leadership, he had a lot of old ideas and behaviours to examine and transform. All of this was intensely uncomfortable for him, but he committed himself to it, and Joan and Tazima were his uncompromising partners in this awakening. Tazima being his wife, who's just sitting there. There was also the enormity of how to translate this shift in approach to the actual work where people lived, in villages and homes across Bangladesh. Many practical and heartbreaking questions were raised in these global meetings. How do you empower women when they're not even able to leave the four walls of their hut? How can they be encouraged to speak out when they have been conditioned to not voice their opinions? In trying to reconcile this, a transformative and very tough conversation occurred between Baddiel and Joan. Joan asked him for the number of women attending vision, commitment and action workshops and animators training versus men, and Baddiel reported that on average each had 10 to 20% female attendance. He outlined the reasons why. Women couldn't travel freely, they don't have autonomy and are beholden to the husband. Even if they wanted to come, they are prevented. They have to attend family chores and domestic duties. Everyone listened, nodding their heads. What he said tracked and made sense. But Joan would have none of it. She challenged Baddiel to increase the number of women and said that if there were not at least as many women as men participants, then the trainings should not be held. Things got quite heated. Baddiel said this... Thank you. John and I were both at this meeting. Baddiel said this wasn't possible. He outlined the reasons again. The best he could hope for over time would be 25 to 30%, but even those numbers would take years to achieve. Joan stopped him there, telling him it must be 50%. If that means you can only get 3 women to an animator's training, then you have a training for 6 people. This is not negotiable. You need to find a way. Her unequivocalness astounded Baddiel, and the exchange didn't sit well with him. He thought Joan was being unreasonable and unfair. How could she possibly understand the constraints he was up against in his country? And working towards 30% female attendance wasn't bad. In that context, it was incredible. No other organisation was managing that. Adil was overwhelmed by the circumstances, realities and difficulties in the way of making this shift. He knew how conservative and patriarchal Bangladesh was and that things moved slowly. He was a man who grew up in that society where women take the back seat. It wasn't easy for him. However, he also trusted Joan, who had been his long-standing partner, and he was aware that she might see something fresh and new, precisely because she wasn't caught up with the intricacies, norms and realities of his country. She wasn't beholden to the old ways. He knew Joan was fiercely committed to ushering in what was most effective for ending hunger, and he couldn't deny that empowering women was crucial. By the end of the back and forth with Joan and the discussions with other leaders in the organisation, Adil found a place to stand. He acknowledged to himself that his background as an educated male gave him greater prestige and respect than others, especially women. He could see he too had inherited an unconscious limiting view of women, and this held him back. Something shifted for him. He would find a way. And with this settled for him internally, he was resolved. The issue now was strategic. Adil needed to figure out how to make this shift happen within his team in Dakar and then in the field. And spoiler alert, he does.
I was in Bangladesh frequently during that time, and one of my jobs as a visitor. Oh,
Keep going.
oh,
This is my beautiful husband.
oh, okay. So one of the things I got to do was to talk with the husbands of the women who had become women leaders as a result of the programs that Neil was creating and his team were creating. And the question I was asked them was, tell me how your life is better now that your wife is a leader in the community. And every one of them could answer it, and they had different answers. It was, we're earning more money now, we have more prestige in the community. But the one thing that everybody said was, for the first time in my life, I discovered that my wife is my friend. The power differential had been so great that experience of friendship, of being married to your best friend, wasn't available to them until that power gap was reduced. It was a miracle. The other sort of oppressed majority in Bangladesh has been the youth, and one of the deal's big commitments was the mobilization of youth. And so, Adil, I just want you to say a little bit about what you were saying today about the powder keg and the spark.
Before I do that, I want to acknowledge that in this journey, there have been people who really made the biggest difference. And John and Carol, and obviously John Holmes was our leaders. And also I have my wife here, and Hunger Project was very smart. They hired me, but for the price of one, they got two. She was the most committed volunteer from the very beginning. So she and I worked very hard. And also my children here, there are two of them here. And I was a respected father, and they endured that, and I hope they forgive me for that. And so they made their own contributions. And talking about the youth, Well, when we started, in fact, I have to tell a little story. When we started in 1993, I was in America and I came in 1970 and was in the United States for 21 years. And I felt that I had an obligation to go back and make a difference to the lives of the people many of whom I mobilized as a young student for the movement of 1969 and leading to the Liberation War. And so while we went back, we were wondering what are we going to do? We were asking around people, what is missing that we can do that will end hunger and poverty? We asked Professor Yunus, we asked late Fazli Hassan Abed, and many other distinguished Bangladeshis as well as ordinary Bangladeshis. Then I had a awakening, and I'm coming to your question. One day I was having tea in a friend's house, early on, before we embarked on our first program. And I looked and I heard some noise under the table. I looked under and saw a bird walking around, and it happened to be a parrot. So I asked the host, this bird is walking around, doesn't it fly away? And he said that no, it doesn't fly away. How come? It cannot fly. So did you clip its wings? No. Is it sick? No. Here it was, a bird, a parrot. In every way it looks like a parrot, walks like a parrot, did everything like a parrot, minus its ability to fly, which is an inherent ability of a bird. So on reflection, we realized later that this is what happened to most Bangladeshis. You know that there was widespread devastation during the War of Liberation, and it caught the imagination of the people from all over the world. There has been outpouring of support, and it continued. That caused dependency, serious dependency syndrome, and from dependency, hopelessness, helplessness, and even resignation. So we found their answer. We found that we are able to identify what needed to be done. So we felt that this mindset of dependency needed to be addressed, and mindset of hopelessness and helplessness must be encountered. And so we developed what we call Vision to Mutual Action workshop. And later we developed animators training who led this workshop throughout the country. And this is how Andhra Pradesh became the largest volunteer-based organization. So now coming to John's question, early on we realized, the older people, the grown-ups, were inflicted with this condition called dependency, and the youth were not. And they were daring, they were courageous, they were willing to take risks, and they had nothing to pull them behind, pull them backward. So we decided to mobilize the youth. From 1995, we started in 1993, and so now we have the largest youth program in the country. We work with about 100,000 young people. And so we have been trying to mobilize the young people, the awakened young people, instill confidence in them, and most of all, make them realize that they're the key. They're the key to a hunger-free and poverty-free Bangladesh. And this was the focus of our work. And the people who led this revolution, monsoon revolution, or whatever you want to call it, and some of those young people were trained by Hunger Project, and Hunger Project, the Youth Against Hunger volunteers led this movement, and so we are very pleased that that our investment, our hard work, and all the persistence we shown paid off. And but then again, see, the ground was prepared before. Ground was prepared. Yours truly and many others did a lot of work, and the highlighting all the misdeeds that the previous government was doing, the killing and human rights violation, lack of rule of law, and stealing and plundering and looting, and also taking money outside the country, all of these things, and stolen, most of all stolen elections. And many people after 2007 were not able to vote in the country. So this condition, these create a condition. And in fact, I was reminded in New York, we are having another event here, and I was there a year ago, and I told them that Hasina's days are numbered, because all this work that has been done, not only us, but also other people created the ground for what has happened later. And it created what we call, what I use the term often, we are standing on a powder keg. And the young people really create a spark. And that created an inferno and leading Hasina to, causing Hasina to flee the country. So, yeah, our large number of young people that we have mobilized and given them hope and confidence and their realization that they have to create a new Bangladesh, and has paid off.
Thank you. So we want to hear from you. Any questions that anyone has? Comments? Yes? Anyone? Lori will bring you a mic.
This is a confession on my part. I know nothing about the Hunger Project. And if you could hum a few bars of what the Hunger Project is, it would be really helpful.
Yes? I'll hum a few bars because I like to be concise. So the Hunger Project, as I mentioned at the very beginning, was created to not be a traditional charity, but rather to recognize that 1 billion hungry people in the world were not a problem to be solved, they were the solution. And that people have within them the power to change their lives and to change the policy environment that they live in. And so in Africa, in South Asia, in Latin America, where most of the chronic persistent hunger is, the Hunger Project began mobilizing communities. Our mantra is start with women, because women almost always know exactly what needs to be done to change the situation, to mobilize everyone, really have everyone see that they can be the key to a better future in their communities, and then to work in partnership with the local government, kind of get local democracy to work. You know, when I first visited India, my parents in St. Louis said, tell us about India. I said, well, include in your gratitude prayers that you don't have to go to Congress with the sewers back up. You know, that there's a local government you can hold accountable for that. And so having people, and really Bangladesh has been a great example of working, empowering women's leadership at the forefront of a community-wide process, mobilizing everyone, the youth, people from every religious subgroup, and then getting a partnership, a real constructive partnership between the local government and the local people. And that's the revolution that Kudil was talking about first, that the UN people and other sort of, quote, professionals in this field are so astonished by when they visit these communities, because these communities are in the words of Gandhi, they are leading their own future and destiny. And so the Hunger Project does that in itself in 12 low-income countries, and then we advocate for it to be taken up elsewhere. So my job was always that second part, getting more people to follow, and so we created this whole movement dedicated to that philosophy of not top-down, but rather bottom-up development and transforming the environment so that people can improve their lives. And currently, the Hunger Project works with about 12 million people on a budget of $20 million a year. So it's very highly leveraged. Other questions?
Hi, sorry, I came in a little bit late, but I do have a question that's more geared towards the youth. For someone who is not necessarily well knowledge or necessarily has the resources, how would you recommend that the youth get started in this work?
So maybe the deal, and Kathy can both speak to that, but the question we've always asked is not what's wrong, because you can go down a rabbit hole. There's plenty wrong. But what's missing? What's missing, which if provided, would unleash people's own creativity, their own ability to solve their own problems? What's missing that the Hunger Project could provide? And so that's when I first met the deal, I asked him that question. And he listed 9 things, including, the ability of youth to bring their energy in a constructive way in these communities. Lots of unemployed youth in Bangladesh. So, continuing to ask that question, okay, now what's missing? In the case of the deal and Joan's conversation about women, it was like, okay, well, if there's all these constraints halting women from full participation, how can we redesign the program to not have those constraints? And continuing asking that question, what's missing that could be provided that would unleash people's own creativity and self-reliance?
Did you mean those specifically in America? Like people in America, like youth generally kind of
I think
getting
it's like in
engaged?
our local communities.
Yeah.
Just like where we are and how we can start
Yeah.
where we are.
Well, if we look in the mirror, and we will see that we have everything that any other human being has, and whether they are poor or rich or successful or unsuccessful. So what it means is that we are all created self-sufficient. What is needed to stand on our own feet. And so that we can become self-reliant. We are created self-sufficient so that we can become self-reliant. So that's the realization. If people come to reach, then they can take the responsibility for their own future. And then they can take action, and individually as well as collectively. While collective action takes place, miracle happens, and the social capital is created. And some of you are familiar with the famous book, Bowling Alone in This Country, by Robert Putnam, I think, that's the name of the author. And one of our famous Bengali poet, in fact, he was the first Asian to get Nobel Prize, Rabindranath Tagore said that poverty is like fear of ghosts. And when you are alone, it engulfs you. When you are together, it goes away. So people take individual as well as collective action to improve their own condition rather than waiting for handouts and waiting for support from others. And obviously, once they take action, other people want to join the winning team, and they support the other. And so it must be
Autocrats.
it starts with the individual, the person taking a stand for his or her own future. Then work individually, take action individually and mobilize others for a better future, collective better future.
Thank you. Other questions?
Perhaps this is a question all the way from the back. My question is to Dr. Balilala Majumdar. You are entrusted with the monumentous task of reforming the Bangladesh Election Commission. You've written a book, how the election proceedings, how it got destroyed, and how all these bad stuff happened. What if your reformation project, for some unknown reason, failed? Compared to the story of the bird, which was not flying, was not able to be flying, how do you reflect on that? Thank you.
What's the last question?
How do you reflect on
What if it doesn't work?
I mean, it doesn't work.
Well, we can guarantee that it will work, but we can only try. And we can make valiant effort. And if we don't try, surely will not work.
Yes.
Only if we try, if we make the effort, if we take the action, then we have a fighting chance. And if not a sure chance of succeeding. So that's what we are going to do in the face of the monumental the challenges that we face. And in fact, everything is in bad shape in Bangladesh, unfortunately. All the institutions are captured and politicized, and the looting and plundering I talked about, and the changes have been made, serious changes in the systems. For example, the caretaker system, which ensured free and fair elections, in Bangladesh's history, there are 4 elections which are held under caretaker system, and they were elections which are considered to be free and fair and acceptable and inclusive. And this caretaker system was unilaterally abolished, and using deceit and fraud and lies, and so all these things happened, and we cannot now reverse the history, but we can, from our vantage point, for where we stand now, we can try to repair those institutions and reform those systems and take action so that we have vibrant institutions and an environment where people could succeed. By the way, about the caretaker system, how through blatant disregard of the constitution, caretaker system was abolished. I wrote a small book, and it was published right before the last election.
Yep.
And some people wondered how come I was not arrested, or I was not taken to Ainagod, House of Mirror. You may have seen that there was an article in New York Times about a House of Mirror, where people who disagreed with the previous regime were taken to these houses, not houses, basically prison cells sort of, and with no lights and no interaction with anyone, and they were there years. So that's the kind of condition that we had before, and people wondered how come I was taken there. I was lucky enough. By the way, I wrote a book, that book on the caretaker, evolution of the caretaker. We have few copies here. If anyone of you wants to buy that, it will be available. And looks like you have some of you bought those books already, and yeah, you may find that interesting.
One substitute.
Was called out earlier.
Sorry, just one substitute question to him. You said if you don't try, you don't get it. So the question to it, did you start try it? If not, then when will it work? And if you have tried, then how long do you think to build an election commission?
Well, if you try, it doesn't work, you try again.
Yep.
It doesn't work, you try again until it works. And at some point it will work. We deserve better in Bangladesh. And we deserve it to get it. And Bangladesh was created at the cost of blood of millions. And this revolution, which was at the cost of a lot of other people, and many of them are young people, and we cannot let it go in vain. So we must not betray with the blood of these people who, without hesitation, they gave their lives. So we must, and we will, and we'll do everything we can so that it works. And we don't know whether it will work, but we are determined to make it work.
Thank you. It is so wonderful to be here today. I just wanted to add another dimension. We've talked so much about women's empowerment and the work that Bajula and the Hunger Project has done. I lived and worked in Bangladesh from January of 2015 to November of 2018, during a period where there was a literal rivalry between Al-Qaeda and ISIS, who were utterly defeated. But I first met this amazing man in conjunction with a project that looked at lowering conflict. And you haven't talked much about that this evening, but I met people who had been trained by the project, who stood up in front of angry mobs and were able to turn them into people willing to talk to one another. And how you can that and sell it to the rest of the world, because we are not talking to one another, and we're giving in to the passions, and anyone who's ever come anywhere near Bangladesh knows about the passion that people have for everything. But that passion can also spill over into violence and into conflict so easily. And by training people to use the power of their words and use the power of just opening up to dialogue, you did amazing things. The people you trained did amazing things. So I
You
just,
fostered some of those people, yeah.
well, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that part of the work you've done, because the world is so hungry to reignite our ability to talk to one another.
Thank you, thank you. And you know, we try to empower leadership. Leaders make things happen. And leaders make things happen what would not otherwise happen. That would not otherwise happen. So that's the kind of leadership that we have tried to empower. And one of the things that has happened over time is the animosity and the hatred and the division, divisiveness within the society. And it has been done willfully, basically. And the religious violence, political violence, ethnic violence was rampant. And Ambassador Ramesh was talking about the radicals who did some really heinous things in Bangladesh. So we mobilized the people from different segments of the society, especially politicians. Our approach has been, we call it multi-party engagement for building peace. And we brought the people from the political parties who have been trying to kill each other. And so we brought them together with civil society engaged. And really, we were trying to make them realize that your politics may be different, but we need to, our politics may be different, but we need to learn to live peacefully together. Otherwise, none of us will be safe. And in fact, this time it has proven that if you don't try to learn to live peacefully together, and the consequences could be bad. And by the way, you'll be pleased to hear that that work, this peace building work, is now spread to about 100 sub-districts, and several thousand leaders have been created throughout the country. And they have been trying to, there is deep wounds created and serious animosity, hatred, and they are trying to mend those wounds. And so that work is going well. Thank you. And first gathering we had of these peace ambassadors, we call them peace ambassadors. Ambassador Barniker was there, and she was so inspired, she later posted some of those in her home. And so it's going well. You'll be pleased to hear.
Bravo, literally there are thousands of conflicts that were intervened by these peace facilitation groups, diffused, using just wonderful creative, the exchange of holy books between the Hindu and Muslim clerics, and just wonderful things that capture people's imagination. Okay, so.
We have time for one more question.
Great.
And I'm sorry, I'm gonna go with the voice we haven't heard from.
Dr. Majumdar, I was very fortunate to be at the media launch for Shudran in 2008, 16 years ago. And many people wouldn't have imagined 16 years later that we would have this revolution, and you've been sort of critically part of it. And I guess very few political commentators or activists could have predicted what happened. But I guess if you look out 16 years from now, what do you see? What are your predictions? I mean, we talked about your hope, but what do you think and in your vision for 16 years from now?
Well, great question.
Well, I have a simple answer. One sentence answer. A democratic, peaceful Bangladesh where everyone lives in harmony, and harmony with one another and harmony with nature. That's what I envision.
It looks like we have one last question in the back.
Great, thanks, Lori. Sorry, I keep having to do this thing. Bright lights.
Thank you so much. My name is Mushfiqul Fazal Ansari. Thank you for doing this, and thank you, Dr. Pratibha Majumdar. You are almost landing in the house of mirror, as you just said. On the other hand, civil society was compromised. If I may say, do you think the civil society now would be up to the challenge in defending democracy?
I hope so. And Mushfiq, would you please stand up, Mushfiq? And he has just been picked as potential ambassador for Bangladesh. And I want to congratulate you, and I'm sure others will congratulate you. And he has been a valiant fighter for Bangladesh, in this town especially. And he raised Bangladesh's all the bad things that were happening time and again. So to answer your question, I hope so. The environment was not enabling, rather very, very disabling. And no rule of law, and rampant human rights violations, and Aina God, the House of Mirrors, and all those things. So that prevented some people from speaking up, excepting few of us who defied those barriers. And so Bangladesh has had a strong, vibrant civil society, but because of the environment, the civil society has not been able to play its role. So I'm hoping and I'm sure and I'm committed to do everything possible so that civil society is able to play its due role in the coming days.
So, Kathy, any last comments you have before we break so that people can buy these books?
No, just that I just really feel that we all feel the same way about bringing in a new future, courageous leadership, hungry for some possibility and inspiration around it, but also willing to roll up our sleeves and get into it and do the work. And so as someone else who also is committed to that, I see you and see you as my partners. Hope you enjoy the book and thanks so much for
I have a
coming.
question to the doctor. Would you allow me to do that?
So we're gonna break and you'll have a chance to come up and ask him, and we'll.
After the break?
No,
The book signing.
No, we're going to end the formal program, and then we'll have the opportunity to talk with one another more informally.
And this gentleman also played a big role.
Yep.
He came all the way from Boston to join this event, and so thank you, and we want to thank you for your contribution in what happened last
A simple question, sir, to you. You have been entrusted to change the election commission reform. How do you ensure the continuity of this process once you complete?
So how do he asks how will you ensure the continuity of the reform process after you make your recommendations?
Every time with the change in the government, the process changes in third world countries.
He'll keep
Well,
fighting.
well, some of you know, and the government of Bangladesh, the interim government has given me the responsibility to come up with a set of ideas and proposals to reform the electoral system, which has been broken, unfortunately. And so we will, my understanding is that we'll come up with a set of proposals and a report, and which needs to be done. And obviously this will have to be implemented by the interim government. So interim government will dialogue with the political parties and come to an agreement and for the create a roadmap for potential election date. So that's the way is my understanding that is going to happen. We will, in formulating our recommendations, we will have ideas and the recommendations of people from all walks of life. And based on those, we will formulate our recommendations. And then the rest will have to be done by the interim government and the political parties.
Great. So Gary, tell people how they can get the books.
Yeah, you can come over to me right here and I'll sell you a copy, and I believe the two of these lovely folks will come down and be here to sign books. So let's give them one final round of applause, please. All right, thank you all so much for coming out to Busboys and Poets. Let's give our author, the lovely doctor, a couple minutes to make their way over. I am but one person, please. All right. Thank you all. Shout out to our lovely, lovely servers tonight, and we love having you. Peace and love.